My daughter-in-law looked me straight in the eyes and said, "This house is ours now." My son didn't say a single word. She walked through my living room as if she had owned it for years. She pointed at the walls and started talking about new paint. Then she smiled and said my bedroom would make the perfect home office. I simply nodded. They thought my silence meant they had won. What they didn't know was that less than 24 hours earlier, I had been sitting in a lawyer's office signing a document that would change everything. My name is Michael Anderson. I'm 61 years old, and for 36 years I worked as an electrician. I wasn't a wealthy man. I never owned fancy cars or took expensive vacations. But I built something I was always proud of. My home. Every room in that house reminded me of a different chapter of my life. My late wife picked the kitchen tiles. Together we planted the oak tree in the front yard. My son Daniel took his first steps in the living room. That house wasn't just a building. It was the story of my family. And I never imagined that one day, the biggest threat to it would come from inside my own family. I wasn't a wealthy man. I never owned expensive cars. I never traveled around the world. But I had something that meant far more to me than money. My home. My late wife, Susan, and I bought the land when we were both in our 20s. We couldn't afford a finished house, so we built it one step at a time. Every paycheck went into lumber, wiring, concrete, or paint. On weekdays I worked 10-hour shifts as an electrician. On weekends I came home and kept building. Susan painted walls while I installed electrical outlets. Some nights we were so exhausted that we fell asleep on folding chairs before we even made it to bed. It took us years to finish that house. But every corner held a memory. The kitchen reminded me of Sunday breakfast. The old oak tree in the yard was planted the year Daniel was born. The marks on the garage wall still showed how much he had grown over the years. To everyone else, it was just another house. To me, it was my life's greatest achievement. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I hadn't answered that phone call. It was a rainy Tuesday evening. I had just finished washing the dinner dishes when my phone rang. Daniel. We usually spoke once or twice a week, so nothing seemed unusual. But the moment I answered, I could hear the stress in his voice. "Dad, can I ask you something?" I told him, "Of course." He took a deep breath before speaking again. "Emma and I are going through a difficult time financially. Our landlord is selling the apartment, and we have to move out sooner than we expected." He paused for a moment. "Would it be okay if we stayed with you, just for a few months? Only until we get back on our feet." I didn't even think about it. He was my son. If family can't help family during hard times, then what's the point of being a family? "Of course," I told him. "The house is big enough for all of us." I could almost hear the relief in his voice. He thanked me several times before hanging up. That night, I genuinely believed I had done the right thing. If anything, I was actually looking forward to having people in the house again. After years of silence, the idea of hearing laughter around the dinner table sounded comforting. I had no idea that this decision would slowly begin changing the atmosphere inside the home I had spent decades building. Daniel and Emma moved in that Saturday morning. They didn't bring much with them. Just a few suitcases, several boxes, and enough furniture to fill the guest bedroom. Emma greeted me with a warm smile. "Thank you for letting us stay here, Michael," she said. "We really appreciate it." I smiled back. "Your family," I replied. "You don't have to thank me." The first few weeks were exactly what I had hoped for. We ate dinner together almost every evening. Daniel helped me mow the lawn on weekends. Emma often insisted on washing the dishes after meals. Sometimes she even brought home my favorite apple pie from the bakery near her office. For the first time in years, the house felt alive again. I could hear conversations instead of silence. There was laughter coming from the kitchen. Someone was always making coffee or watching television in the living room. I remember thinking that maybe this unexpected change had turned out to be a blessing. But looking back now, I realized the warning signs were already there. They were just so small that I chose not to notice them. One afternoon, I came home from grocery shopping and found the living room arranged differently. The armchair where I had spent countless evenings reading was no longer by the window. My late wife's favorite lamp had been moved to another corner of the room. Emma noticed me looking around. "I hope you don't mind," she said with a smile. "I just thought this layout looked more modern." I looked at the room for a moment. It wasn't a big change, so I simply smiled and said, "If it makes everyone more comfortable, that's fine." At the time, I truly believed it was only furniture. A few days later, I noticed something else. It happened so naturally that, at first, I didn't think much of it. I walked into the kitchen one morning to make my usual cup of coffee. The cabinet where I always kept my favorite mug was empty. I looked around for a moment before Emma walked in. "Oh," she said casually. "I moved everything into the other cabinet. It makes more sense this way." She smiled as if she had done me a favor. I opened the new cabinet and found my mugs stacked behind plates and bowls I had never seen before. Yeah, it wasn't a big deal. So I thanked her and made my coffee. Over the next week, little things kept changing. My reading chair was moved again. Family photos disappeared from the hallway and were replaced with modern decorations. The shelves Susan and I had built together were suddenly filled with Emma's books and plants. None of these things were important by themselves, but together, they slowly made the house feel less familiar. One evening, Daniel noticed me looking at an old family picture that had been taken down. "Emma just wants to make the place feel more like home," he said with a small smile. I nodded. I understand. And I truly believed I did. After all, they were trying to build a future together. I kept telling myself that sharing a home meant making compromises. But there is a difference between sharing a home and slowly disappearing from it. I simply hadn't realized it yet. By the second month, the changes were no longer just about furniture. They had become part of our daily lives. Emma started making decisions without asking me first. She replaced the groceries I usually bought with different brands because she said they were better. She created a cleaning schedule and taped it to the refrigerator. My name wasn't even on it. At first I laughed. I assumed she had simply forgotten. But little comments began to appear more often. "Michael, could you leave your shoes by the back door?" "Michael, we're trying to keep the living room a little quieter in the evenings." "Michael, would you mind eating a bit earlier? We usually have dinner around 6. None of those requests sounded unreasonable by themselves. But after hearing enough of them, I started feeling like a guest in my own home. Daniel rarely said anything. Whenever our eyes met, he would give me an awkward smile and quickly change the subject. One Saturday morning, I walked into the garage to grab my toolbox. Several of the shelves were empty. My tools had been packed into plastic storage bins and pushed against the back wall. Emma stepped into the garage a moment later. "We needed more room," she said. "It just looks much cleaner this way." I stared at the boxes for a few seconds. Those tools had been in the same place for nearly 20 years. Once again, I told myself it wasn't worth arguing. But deep down, something no longer felt right. About a week later, Emma suggested that we all have dinner together on Friday night. "It'll be nice," she said. "We barely sit down as a family anymore." I thought it sounded like a good idea. We ordered takeout, set the table, and for a while, everything felt almost normal again. We talked about work. We laughed at an old story Daniel remembered from high school. For a moment, I honestly believed the difficult weeks were finally behind us. Then Emma slowly looked around the dining room. "I've been thinking," she said. "This house has so much potential." I smiled politely. Daniel looked around the room and smiled. "Dad built most of this place with his own hands." Emma nodded. "I know. That's exactly why it's such a wonderful home." Then she looked directly at me. "But some rooms don't really make sense anymore." I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" She answered as calmly as if we were discussing the weather. "The guest room could become a nursery someday. The dining room is much bigger than we actually need." She paused for a second. "And honestly," she smiled again, "your bedroom gets the best morning sunlight in the whole house." I gave a small laugh. "That's one of the reasons I've always loved that room." Emma smiled back. But this time, there was something behind that smile that I couldn't quite understand. "We'll figure something out," she said softly. Daniel quietly looked down at his plate. He didn't say a single word. Neither did I. Yet for the first time, I had the strange feeling that this conversation wasn't really about furniture or room layouts anymore. It felt like they were already imagining a future, where my opinion mattered less than I thought. A few days after that dinner, I came home earlier than usual. I had spent the morning helping an old friend repair a broken fence across town. By the time I walked through the front door, the house was unusually quiet. I could hear voices coming from upstairs. As I climbed the stairs, I noticed the door to my bedroom was open. Emma was standing inside. She wasn't cleaning. She wasn't looking for something. She was measuring the room with a tape measure. Daniel stood nearby, holding a notebook. They both turned when they saw me. "What's going on?" I asked. Emma smiled as if nothing was unusual. "We're just planning a few changes." I looked around the room. My dresser had been moved away from the wall. The curtains were halfway down. Fabric samples and paint color cards were lying on my bed. I looked at Daniel. "Did you know about this?" He hesitated for a moment. Then he quietly nodded. Before I could say anything else, Emma looked me straight in the eyes. Her smile never disappeared. "Michael," she said calmly, "this house is ours now." The room fell completely silent. I looked at my son. I expected him to say, "Emma, that's enough." But he never did. He simply lowered his eyes. At that moment, I finally understood. This was never about rearranging furniture. It was never about making the house feel more modern. Somewhere along the way, they had stopped seeing me as the owner of this home. And that was the moment I decided I needed professional advice. I didn't argue with them that afternoon. I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked downstairs, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat quietly on the back porch. For nearly an hour, I stared at the old oak tree that Susan and I had planted when Daniel was born. My mind kept replaying Emma's words. "This house is ours now." I wanted to believe she hadn't meant them the way they sounded. But deep inside, I already knew she had. The following Monday, I made an appointment with an attorney who had handled Susan's estate years earlier. His office hadn't changed much. The same wooden shelves. The same old clock on the wall. After we exchanged a few greetings, he looked at me and said, "Michael, what brings you here today?" I told him everything. I told him about Daniel and Emma moving in. I told him about the small changes around the house. I told him what Emma had said in my bedroom. He listened without interrupting. When I finally finished, he folded his hands on the desk. Then he asked me one simple question. "Michael, have you signed anything?" For a second, I wasn't sure what he meant. Then I answered, "No, I've never signed anything." He slowly leaned back in his chair. Then, for the first time since I had walked into his office, he smiled. I wasn't sure why he was smiling. Did I say something funny? I asked. He shook his head. "No, Michael. Actually, what you just told me is very important." He opened a folder and took out a blank sheet of paper. "Let me explain something. Inviting family to stay in your home doesn't automatically give them ownership. Paying for groceries doesn't give them ownership. Helping around the house doesn't give them ownership." He looked directly at me. "Unless you've signed legal documents transferring ownership, this house is still yours." I sat there quietly. Somehow, hearing someone else say those words lifted a weight off my shoulders. He continued, "I'm not telling you to start a fight. I'm telling you to protect yourself." Then he gave me 3 pieces of advice. First, don't sign anything unless you fully understand it. Second, keep records of important conversations if the situation continues to escalate. Third, he paused, don't wait until the problem becomes much bigger. I nodded slowly. Before leaving, I asked him one last question. "Do you think my son realizes what's happening?" The attorney thought for a moment. Then he answered quietly, "I don't know, but I believe you'll find out very soon." That evening, I asked Daniel and Emma if we could sit down and talk after dinner. They both agreed. We gathered in the living room. No one spoke for the first few seconds. Finally, I broke the silence. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." Daniel looked concerned. Emma folded her hands and waited. "When I invited you to stay here, I said, I wanted to help you get back on your feet. I never expected us to become uncomfortable around each other." Daniel nodded slowly. "Neither did I," he admitted. I took a deep breath. "A few days ago, I met with an attorney." Emma's expression changed immediately. She didn't say anything. I continued calmly. "He reminded me of something important. This is still my home. I want us to treat each other with respect. But from now on, no decisions about this house will be made without my agreement." The room became very quiet. Daniel looked at Emma, then back at me. "Dad," he said softly, "I think we've let things go too far." Emma looked down at the floor. She was silent for several long seconds. Finally, she spoke. "I never meant to make you feel like this." It wasn't an apology, but it was the first time she realized I wasn't simply going to stay silent anymore. For the next few days, everything seemed quieter. Emma barely spoke to me. Daniel tried to act as though nothing had happened. I almost believed our conversation had changed everything. Then, on Thursday afternoon, there was a knock at my front door. When I opened it, 2 contractors were standing outside. One of them smiled. "Good afternoon, sir. We're here to measure the master bedroom." I frowned. "I'm sorry, the what?" He looked down at his paperwork. "Mrs. Emma Carter scheduled today's appointment." For a second, I simply stared at him. Then I calmly replied, "I'm the homeowner. No work has been approved. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." The 2 men apologized immediately. They packed up their equipment and left. A few minutes later, Emma came home. She looked surprised when she saw the empty driveway. "Where are they?" she asked. I looked at her calmly. "I sent them away." Her face changed. "You what?" I didn't raise my voice. "I told you during our conversation. Nothing happens in this house without my permission." For the first time, Emma had no answer. The following Saturday morning, Daniel knocked on my bedroom door. "Dad, do you have a few minutes?" I nodded. He looked exhausted, as if he hadn't slept much all week. We sat down at the kitchen table. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened." He rubbed his hands together nervously. When Emma said, "This house is ours now," I should have stopped her. He looked down. Instead, I stayed quiet. And every time I stayed quiet, I let you down. I didn't interrupt him. He deserved the chance to say everything he had been carrying inside. "Dad, you opened your home because you wanted to help us. Somehow, we started acting like you were the guest." He shook his head. That wasn't right. Then he placed a small envelope on the table. Inside was a signed lease agreement. "Emma and I rented an apartment. We'll start moving next weekend." I looked at the papers, then back at my son. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "It's time. Not because you forced us. Because it's the right thing to do." The following weekend, Daniel and Emma packed the last of their belongings. There were no arguments, no slammed doors, no angry words, just a quiet morning. I helped Daniel carry a few boxes to the truck. Neither of us spoke very much. Before getting into the driver's seat, he turned toward me. "Dad, thank you." I smiled. "For what?" He looked back at the house. "For helping us when we needed it. And for reminding me that kindness should never be mistaken for weakness." I walked over and hugged him. "You're my son. This door will always be open to you. Just remember, a home isn't measured by who owns it. It's measured by how people treat each other inside it." He nodded. Then he drove away. That afternoon, I walked through every room in the house. Everything was quiet again. I moved my toolbox back to its old place in the garage. I rehung the family photograph that had been taken down months earlier. Then I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee. The old oak tree was still standing, just like it always had. Looking at it, I realized something. Houses can be repaired. Broken trust takes much longer. If this story taught me anything, it's that helping your family is never a mistake. But protecting your dignity is just as important. Because respect is the strongest foundation any home can ever have.